When I picked up the phone to ask my son Max when the wedding would be, my daughter-in-law Lena looked me right in the eye and said with a chilling smile, "Oh, we already got married yesterday. We only invited special people." The words hit me like a bucket of ice water. Special people. I, who for 3 years had paid their monthly rent of $500, bought every piece of furniture in their house, and filled their refrigerator when they had nothing to eat. I was not a special person. I stood there in the living room of my own house, holding the phone as if it weighed 1,000 pounds, watching my son avoid my gaze, while Lena made herself comfortable on the sofa that I had bought for them. Nietzsche once said, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." At that moment I still didn't know it, but that phrase would become my salvation. The pale pink dress I had picked out for her wedding hung uselessly in my closet, along with the new shoes and the illusion of being part of the most important day of my only son's life. I had spent $200 on that dress, thinking about how nice I would look in Max's wedding photos in which I would never appear. For weeks, I had planned every detail. I had put money aside to give them $1,000 as a wedding gift. I had called my sister Diana in Chicago to tell her the good news. I had cleaned my house from top to bottom, thinking they might come celebrate with me after the ceremony. All of that collapsed in a second with those 4 poisoned words. Only special people. Max finally lifted his gaze and said in a rehearsed-sounding voice, "Mom, it was an intimate thing, very small, just the 2 of us and the witnesses. But I knew it was a lie. I saw the photos on social media. I saw Lena's parents proudly posing next to the bride and groom. I saw her siblings toasting with champagne. I saw Lena's white dress, which I had helped finance with the $800 I had given her last month for her personal expenses. I saw everything I wasn't supposed to see." Nietzsche wrote about resentment, that pain that ferments inside us when we are treated unjustly. He said, "We can let resentment destroy us, or we can use it as fuel for our transformation." I still didn't know it, but I was about to transform myself. A week later, exactly 7 days after that humiliation, Lena called me with a completely different voice. She was no longer the confident woman who had excluded me from her wedding. Now she sounded desperate, almost pleading. "Renata, the rent is overdue. The landlord is pressuring us and says if we don't pay this week, he will kick us out. You forgot to make the transfer." Her voice trembled slightly, as if the world were ending. I was silent for a few seconds, remembering all the times I had run to the bank to make that transfer. All the times I had cancelled my own plans to make sure they had a roof over their heads. All the times I had eaten beans and rice so I could give them money for their desires. And now, after they had excluded me from the most important moment of their lives, they had the audacity to call me as if nothing had happened. "Lena," I said with a calm that surprised even me, "didn't I warn you that I only help special people?" The silence on the other end of the line was so deep that I could hear my own heart beating. For the first time in years, it was not I who was trembling, but her. Nietzsche spoke about the Bermensch, the Superman who transcends the morality of the herd and creates his own values. At that moment, without knowing it, I was becoming my own version of the no longer a slave to others' expectations, but a creator of my own limits. Renata, I don't understand, she stammered. We were always special to you. You're like a second mom to me. Lies. All lies wrapped in that sweet voice she only used when she needed something. The same voice she had used to ask me for money for the wedding dress, for the honeymoon, for the rings, everything I had helped finance without knowing I would never see the ceremony where they were exchanged. That night, after I hung up the phone, I sat on my bed and cried. But they weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of anger, of accumulated frustration, of years of silently endured humiliation. I cried for all the times they made me feel that my love was a burden, my presence a hindrance, my money the only thing I had to offer. I cried for the foolish mother I had been, for the woman who had lost herself, trying to be indispensable to those who considered her dispensable. But when I woke up the next morning, something inside me had changed. Nietzsche said, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." And I had enough chaos to create an entire galaxy. I stood up and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, the same tired eyes. As always, the same wrinkles that told stories of years of giving love without getting it back. But there was something else in my gaze, a hardness I didn't recognize, a determination that had been buried under years of compliance. I went to the kitchen and made coffee, as I had every morning for 40 years. But this time I didn't think about calling Max to ask how he had slept. I did uncheck my phone in anticipation of a message from him apologizing for the previous day. Humiliation. For the first time in a long time, I was my own first concern. I sat at the table where I had so often planned surprises for them, counted bills for their expenses, and cried silently when they treated me with indifference. Now, this table would be a witness to something completely different. I took out my checkbook, my bank statements, and started to do the math. I wanted to see in exact numbers the extent of my own foolishness. Monthly rent of $500 multiplied by 36 months, $18,000, food and supplies, approximately $200 a month. $7,200 birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, anniversary gifts, at least $3,000 Lena's medical emergencies, $800. The car loan they never paid me back, $2,500. The air conditioner repair in their apartment, $600. The living room furniture, $1,200 total. $33,400. That was the exact sum of my generosity. $33,400 I had wasted from my husband's inheritance, from my pension, from the savings I had put aside penny by penny for decades of honest work. All that money thrown out the window to keep two adults comfortable who could uneven pretend to respect me. Nietzsche wrote about the eternal return. The idea that if we had to live our life exactly the same way infinitely, would we still choose it? I asked myself that question. If I had to live these last 3 years again, the same way, would I choose it? The answer was a resounding nitrogen monoxide. And if I wouldn't choose to relive that past, then I needed to change my future. The phone rang and I saw Max's name on the screen. Normally, my heart would have pounded as I ran to answer, hoping he would finally apologize and explain that everything had been a misunderstanding. But this time, I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Finally, it fell silent, and I continued drinking my coffee as if nothing had happened. Nietzsche spoke about the will to power, not in the sense of power over others, but of power over oneself. The power to say no. The power to establish limits, the power to value one's own existence. 10 minutes later, it rang again. This time, it was Lena. I let it ring, too. Then, a text came from Max. "Mom, please answer. We need to talk." I deleted the message without replying. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I decided to go for a walk. I hadn't done that in months, without a specific purpose, without an errand related to them. It was always the bank for transfers, the supermarket to buy them something they needed, the pharmacy for Lena's medications. Today, I went for a walk just because I wanted to. I walked past the park where I had often taken Max as a child. I remembered that sweet boy who hugged me tight and said I was the best mom in the world. When had he become this man who treated me like an ATM with feelings? When did I start confusing love with money? When did I start to believe I had to buy my own son's affection? At the bank, where I had so often made automatic transfers, I stopped in front of the door. The branch manager, Mr. Klein, saw me through the glass and waved. I had known him for years. He had processed every one of my transfers to Max and Lena. He had watched my account drain month after month to fill theirs. I went inside and walked directly to his office. "Mr. Klein," I told him, "I need to cancel the automatic transfers I have programmed." He looked at me, surprised. For 3 years, these transfers had been as regular as the sunrise. "Are you sure, Mrs. Richter?" Did something happen? His concern was genuine, more genuine than any interest Max had shown in me in recent months. "What happened is that I finally opened my eyes," I replied. "I want to cancel everything, and I also want information on how to protect my accounts. I don't want anyone else to have access to my money." While Mr. Klein processed the cancellations, my phone didn't stop ringing. Max, Lena, Max again. It was as if they had developed a radar to detect when their source of income was in danger. I turned the phone off completely. "Mrs. Richter?" Mr. Klein said, as he handed me the papers. "I apologize for intruding, but in all these years, I have seen you be very generous with your family. I hope you are not being pressured to make these changes." His words touched me deeply. This man, who barely knew me beyond bank transactions, showed more genuine concern for my well-being than my own son. "I'm not being pressured, Mr. Klein. On the contrary, I have finally stopped pressuring myself. When I left the bank, I felt strangely light, as if I had left an enormous burden in that office. For the first time in years, my money was entirely mine. I had no financial obligations to people who saw me as a resource instead of a person. I went home and found 3 cars parked in front of my door. Max's, Lena's, and one I didn't recognize. I could see movement inside my house through the windows. My blood ran cold. At case, I had given them keys because I trusted them, because I thought they would one day take care of me just as I had taken care of them. I took a deep breath before opening the door. It was time for the first real confrontation of my new life. I opened the door and saw a scene I will never forget. Max was sitting on my sofa with his head in his hands. Lena was pacing back and forth like a caged animal, and an older man I didn't know was going through papers on my dining table. My papers? My personal documents. What is happening here? I asked in a voice that sounded louder than I expected. All three of them looked at me as if I were the intruder in my own house. Lena was the first to speak, and her voice had that desperate urgency I had already heard on the phone. "Renata, thank God you're here. We need to talk. Mr. Fisher is from the law firm we consulted about your situation." My situation? The question came out of my mouth with a calm that surprised me. What situation? I'm doing perfectly fine. Max finally lifted his head and looked at me with those eyes that once belonged to an innocent child and now only reflected financial panic. "Mom, we went to the bank and they told us you canceled all the transfers. Mr. Klein explained that you also blocked our access to your accounts. We don't understand why you did that," Nietzsche said. The most common lie is that with which we lie to ourselves. Max was lying to himself, believing that this had been an irrational decision on my part. Mr. Fisher, a man in his 50s in a gray suit and a smile that didn't inspire confidence, approached me with an outstretched hand. "Mrs. Richter, I am Dr. Fisher, a family law attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental well-being and have asked me to assess the situation." I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I went directly to my dining table and collected all my documents that he had been reviewing without my permission. "These are my private papers. You have no right to look at them without my consent." "Mom," Max interjected with that condescending voice he had perfected in recent years, "we're worried about you. Your behavior has been very strange lately. First, you financially cut us off without an explanation. Then, you don't answer our calls. We think you might need professional help." Lena approached and tried to take my hand with that fake tenderness she reserved for moments when she needed something. "Renata, honey, we know you're under a lot of stress. Maybe the loneliness is affecting you more than you think. At your age, episodes of confusion are normal." The word confusion echoed in my head like an alarm bell. Now I understood why they had brought the lawyer. It wasn't about helping me. It was about declaring me mentally incompetent and taking control of my finances. The same woman who had told me they only invited special people to their wedding was now treating me like a senile old lady. Nietzsche wrote about the transvaluation of values. The moment when we destroy old values and create new ones. This was my moment of transvaluation. "I am not confused," I said with a firmness that silenced everyone. "I am clearer than I have been in years, and you are going to leave my house right now." Mr. Fisher tried to hand me a folder with documents. "Mrs. Richter, we have prepared some documents that could facilitate this transition. A power of attorney that would allow Max and Lena to manage your finances more efficiently. This would just be temporary until you feel better." I took the folder and, without even opening it, threw it directly into the trash can. "The only transition that is going to happen here is yours to the front door." Lena started to cry, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of frustration, of contained rage. "You can't do this to us, Renata. We were counting on you. We made plans based on your support. We bought things. We took on financial obligations because we knew we could count on you. Obligations based on my money." I replied. Not on my well-being, not on my happiness, not on my company, just on my money. And now that I have decided that my money is better used in my own life, I am suddenly a confused old woman who needs legal guardianship. Max tried to approach me, but I took a step back. He was no longer the boy who ran into my arms when he had nightmares. He was a 35-year-old man who saw his mother as an obstacle between himself and a comfortable life financed by others. "Mom, we made mistakes," he said in a voice that was supposed to sound remorseful. The wedding was a misunderstanding. Lena was nervous. I was under pressure. "We can fix this if you just become reasonable again." Reasonable? The word tasted bitter in my mouth. Being reasonable means continuing to pay for your life while you treat me like a stranger. It means pretending it doesn't hurt to have been excluded from the most important day of my only son's life. Nietzsche spoke about amor fati, love of fates, accepting and loving everything that happens to us, not as victims, but as creators of meaning. I was loving my fate. I was loving this pain that was transforming me. I was loving this strength I was discovering in myself. The three of them walked to the door with the wounded dignity of people who are not used to being told no. Before he went out, Max turned to me one last time. "Mom, this is going to end very badly for you. You're going to end up alone with no one to take care of you when you really need it." "Max," I said with deep sadness, but also with crystalline clarity, "I am already alone. The difference is that now it's by my own choice, not by your neglect." When I closed the door behind them, I stood in my living room, surrounded by the most beautiful silence I had heard in years. It was the silence of freedom. In the following months, Max and Lena tried everything: calls from unknown numbers, surprise visits that were blocked by security cameras, emotional letters asking for forgiveness, empty legal threats. But Nietzsche had taught me about the eternal recurrence of the same, and I had decided that if I had to live my life again, it would not be as a victim. I hired a lawyer, Mr. Weber, who helped me protect all my assets. I changed my will. I cancelled all joint accounts. I changed the locks. But I did more than that. I started to live. I traveled to Europe, something I had always wanted to do but postponed because Max needed help with rents. I took painting classes. I learned Italian. I met incredible people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give. My sister Diana came to visit me and we cried together, not from sadness, but from relief. "I finally have my sister back," she said. I made new friends: Eleanor, Maria, Carmen, Alfreda, all women who had been through similar situations. We formed an informal support group that we called the Survivors. I donated half of my inheritance to organizations that protect the elderly from family abuse. With the other half, I lived as I had always wanted to live. 6 months after the confrontation, I received a letter from Max. It wasn't a letter asking for money. It was a true, vulnerable, human letter. "Mom, I lost my job. Lena left me when the money ran out. I'm living in a tiny apartment and working 2 jobs to pay my bills. But for the first time in my life, I understand the value of honest work. I understand what you sacrificed for me during all those years. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I finally understood. Nietzsche was right. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. I needed to break to rebuild myself. Thank you for having the courage to let me fall. Your son, Max. I cried when I read that letter. But they were different tears. They were tears of hope. I didn't respond immediately. I let a few months pass. I wanted to be sure that his transformation was real, not just another manipulation. A year after the secret wedding, Max sought me out again, this time in person. The doorbell rang at my new house. I had moved to a beautiful apartment in the city center, and I opened the door. He was different. Thinner, more tired, but his eyes had something I hadn't seen in years. Genuine humility. "Mom," he said simply. I understood. I didn't hug him immediately, but I invited him in. We talked for hours. He told me about his fall, about how Lena abandoned him, about how he had to learn to survive on his own. "You saved me, Mom," he said. "By cutting me off, you forced me to grow. I hated you for it, but now I understand. It was the only way for me to learn. We didn't go back to what we were before, because what we were before was broken. We built something new, something based on mutual respect, not on financial dependence. He never asked me for money again. And when I finally hugged him, months after that first conversation, it wasn't the hug of a codependent mother hugging a manipulative son. It was the hug of two adults who had survived the storm and emerged stronger. Today, at 73 years old, I look back and see the path clearly. Nietzsche was right about everything. What does not kill me makes me stronger. The betrayal made me stronger. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. My why was to recover my dignity. Become who you are. I finally became myself. God is dead. And we killed him. I killed the false god of love, bought with money, the eternal return. If I had to live it all again, I would choose exactly this path of pain and transformation. Renata's story doesn't end with revenge or bitterness. It ends with wisdom. She learned that true love never has a price. She learned that sometimes the greatest proof of love is to let people fall so they can learn to stand up on their own. She learned that strengthening yourself doesn't mean hardening your heart, but strengthening your boundaries. My name is Renata. I am 73 years old, and thanks to Nietzsche and my own courage, I finally learned that the most important person I need to love and protect is myself. What didn't kill me made me reborn. If you liked this story, you can support me simply by leaving a like and sharing this video with someone who would enjoy it too. And you, what would you do in this person's place? I would love to hear your opinion, so please share it with me in the comments. Also, write where you are watching this from for more live stories like this, like the video, and subscribe to my channel. There are many other stories waiting for you, with heartfelt greetings. Until next time.